Welcome to this tutorial showing you how to create a piece of artwork in the style of Magdiel Lopez. And I have already opened up a piece of his work that I'm going to be responding to in Photopea. And I'm going to open a new project, so File, New, and then choose Print and A4 and click Create. And I have my new project. And the first thing I'm going to do is colour the background. And to help me do this, I'm going to use Magdiel Lopez's work. So I get the same colours. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool just to grab that warm yellow colour at the top. And then switch the palettes round to grab the nice pink colour in the middle. And then I'm going to go back to my piece and I'm going to grab the paintbrush and make sure it's really nice and big. And I'm going to just paint in the top and then change the colour over and paint in the middle. And then I'm going to go back to Magdiel's work and eyedropper the nice blue from the bottom corner and use the paintbrush just to paint in the last bit of my piece. Okay, then I'm going to blur these together, so filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to whack that right up to the top and click OK, and that has my nice blended background. Okay, so now I'm going to duplicate this layer, right click on the layer, click duplicate layer, and I'm going to make this new layer smaller with the arrow tool and make sure I've got a similar size border around the whole piece. Might need stretching like mine does just a little bit. Okay, and then we need to make these two layers a little bit different from each other. So on this new layer I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, and I'm going to bring the lightness up just a little bit like that. Okay, and the saturation tiny bit. Okay, I'm also going to just unlock this bottom layer and using the arrow tool, just drag it down at the bottom and up at the top. And this kind of makes the colours differently placed from the layer above. So again, there's more difference between the two. And I'm also going to go Image, Adjustments, Brightness, Contrast. And I'm just going to bring down the contrast after I've worked it out and down with the brightness. There we go. Just a little bit. Okay, good. Right, that's my background sorted. Now I've opened up a photograph of me and I'm just going to magic wand the background and press delete to get rid of that background. And I'm then going to zoom in so I can see what I'm doing and grab the polygonal lasso tool and just quickly go round my beard and up the side of my face to isolate my head from my body. And then I'm going to go round my body and then press delete, and that is going to delete my body. Okay, so all I'm left with on the piece is my head. So I get the rectangular select tool and select the whole thing. Press Ctrl C to copy it, Ctrl V to paste it in. It's just below that layer, so I'll drag it up. There it is. And then I'm just going to resize it and swivel it so it is where I want it to be. Okay. And then I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, because I want to pump up the saturation a little bit. Okay. Right, now it's a case of having to divide my head up into different pieces. So I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool again. I'm going to zoom in. So once again I can see what I'm doing. And the first thing I'm going to do is cut my head in half vertically. So kind of following the flow and the form of my head. I'm going down the middle, so thinking about where my brow is, where my nose is, how my lips are shaped, and then down how my beard would curve. I go all the way down, and then up the sides, and then join it together. And then I'm going to press Control and C to copy it. Then I'm going to delete it, press delete, and then I'm going to press Control and V and paste it. So I've deleted it from its main layer and created a new one on a new layer, okay? Right, next up with the other bit, I've just made that bit invisible so we can see this bit. I'm going to divide this part into 3 bits. So I'm going to mask off one bit, and same as before, Control C to copy it, then press delete, then Control V to paste it, okay? And just to show you, I've got it on its own layer there now. And then I'm going to divide this bottom bit into 2. And again, masking off with the polygonal lasso tool, Control C to copy it, then press delete, then Control V to paste it back in on its new layer. Okay, so now I can go get rid of those and bring back my other half of my face, which I'm just going to divide into 2 halves. So I'm going to go across the nose and across the cheek and the ear, and then up and around. And then same as before, Control C to copy it, I press delete to get rid of it, and then Control V to paste it back in on its new layer. Okay, and now I'll bring back all the bits and I will zoom out, and you can see now that I can pull apart these different layers and place them where I want them to be. Remember, they're always movable because they're on different layers, so if I'm not putting them into exactly the right place at the moment, that's fine, because I'm going to be doing that in a second. I just want to get them correct in relation to each other, and then I will move them to a more central position on the page. Okay, just play with that beard bit again. Okay, I think we're almost there. Okay, now I'm going to grab all those layers together by pressing Shift and clicking on them, and I'm going to shimmy them into place with the arrow key so they're in a more central position. Okay, now I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to drag that underneath my bottom right layer. There we go, that's the one. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in so I can see what I'm doing again. And I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool to create a shape that looks like it's my head. And you can see I go thin and then do that kind of ear shape there. And then I go down and around and back up to the original point. And that's created a mask that I'm now going to fill with the gradient tool. And I want a kind of rainbow one, that one. Okay. And then I'm going to have to play with the angle here by just seeing where it goes. There we go. That's the angle I want. Okay. And then I'm going to double click on that layer because I want to put some shadow on it like it's underneath that other piece. So I'm going to go inner shadow. And it's looking pretty good at the moment, actually. So opacity is about halfway up. Just checking the angle, making sure that the size is where it should be. You're going to have to play with these settings, size and distance and angle, until you're happy. So I have that there now. Okay, and now I'm going to put my next kind of part, slice if you will, in. So new layer. And I'm going to put this below the top left piece. Okay, just to show you, that's the one I'm going to do. And I'm grabbing the polygonal lasso tool again, and from that corner, just masking off where I think it would be, and then coming back round up to the other point. And then because this is behind, I can just quickly go like that, back to the original point. And again, gradient tool, we're gonna have to check the angle on this. That's pretty good. Okay, and again, we're gonna double click on this layer and we're gonna put a shadow in. So inner shadow, that's the one. And I'll just move it up so you can see. That's in quite a good place because it's the same settings as the last time I used it. So I'm just having a bit of a play, making sure that everything is the right angle. Clicking OK. Right, that's 2 bits done. And I'll go for that middle section. So there it is. I'm going to get the new layer, drag that underneath that section. And in this one, I've got a side part that I need to make and a top part. So I'm going to use the masking tool just to go from the bottom and up. And then you're going to have to check that angle. So just, there we go, that's it. And then back down. And then gradient tool again. And as per each time, having a play until you get the angle of the colours right. Okay, and then again, just want to make sure. A little bit more. Okay, right, now we double click on the layer, add that inner shadow again. Looks good to me because it's the same as the top piece. And you'll see I have the top of that section to do. So I've created a new layer again. And this time I'm going from the same point as before and then coming back round as if it's a chunk. Okay, and then as before with the gradient tool, filling it up and playing with the angle again. And I'm not going to want all the colours in this one, so I'm kind of pulling the handle further than I would need to in others. Okay, and then double clicking on the layer, adding that shadow. Again, playing until I get the feel that I want. And then the last piece. And now I look at it again, I just want to move it up a bit. So I'm just going to quickly go back to its layer, go to the arrow tool and just bring it up a little bit. Okay, now I'm happy. So a new layer, drag it below that piece. Grab the polygonal lasso tool and from the bottom, go up and over. And again, this is where you need to make sure your angle is right. There we go. Good. And then back down underneath that chunk. And there's my piece. So I just fill it in with the gradient tool again. And you should be able to get a feel for the angles now. So it's looking pretty good. I think I'll leave it at that. And then same as before, double click, check out the inner shadow, make sure everything is where you want it to be, settings wise. Playing with the distance and the size and the angle to make it feel like it's behind that other segment, other part of your face. And okay, right. And then last bit here, same process, new layer, polygonal lasso tool, and mask it off and bring it back round, checking your angles back to the same point. Then going to the gradient tool, and again thinking of angles, filling that area. It's quite difficult, this one, because it's quite a small area. You can do it as many times as you like until you're happy. Okay, all good. And then same as the other bits, inner shadow, and playing with the settings, especially seeing as this is a smaller area. Everything's going to have to be brought down a little bit. And then click OK once you're happy. And that is all the areas done and dusted. And I'll zoom out and you can see what my main thing looks like now. I've just noticed I've got a little bit of a gap there. So I'm just going to grab that and just shimmy that area around until I get that hidden. Okay, sometimes these things happen. Right, okay, that's it. All good. Right, next up I'm going to take all of those layers, click on the top one and hold shift and click on the bottom one and then right click and click merge layers, and that puts all of those layers together, which does mean that you now can't change them, but you can easily move them around, centralize them, and they'll also be taking up less memory and help Photopea out. All right, I'm just going to go image adjustments, hue saturation, and just saturate me even more because I want to. Okay, and then the last thing to do is to put some of the kind of background things in. So I'm going to use the shape tool, make sure I've got a white fill and a white stroke, and I'm going to put a little thin rectangle up there and another one down in the bottom left hand corner down here. And then I'm going to grab the ellipse shape and holding shift so I get a circle. I'm going to put one there and one down the bottom. You can put them where you like. They're a good tool to be able to kind of balance the picture out a bit, putting some extra features in. Okay, right, now I'm going to put some text into the piece. So I've got this font here, but you can choose whichever font you want. And I'm also writing whatever I want. It's up to you what you choose. In this box, I'm writing I. I'm just going to bring the font right up for now. Don't worry that it's not the right size at the moment. We're going to change that once we've put these bits of text in. Okay, so I'm going to right click on this layer and duplicate it, and then I'm going to drag this new layer over to here, and this is where I'm going to change the word. So I'm going to grab the T and type really. Okay, then I'm going to duplicate that layer and I'm going to grab it, and then I'm going to move down to here. And I'm going to change the word really for love. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer. And I'm going to move this layer over to this gap down here. And again, grab the T, change that to streaky. Then I'm going to right click and duplicate that layer. And using the arrow tool, just going to move down to here. And I'm going to use the T to change this to bacon. So I'm essentially going to be telling everybody I really like streaky bacon, but really subtly on my piece. Okay, so that lettering's too big at the moment, so I'm going to click on the top layer and then on the bottom layer holding shift, so I got all the text layers together, and then going to the T and then dragging the size down, and you'll see it drags the size of all of those layers down to the size that I want. Okay. Right, next up I'm going to put some text around the outside, so click on the T, drag open a text box in the top left corner, and I'm going to type in N.51, in other words number 51, because this happens to be my 51st tutorial. So it's number 51 to me. And I'm going to duplicate that layer and drag it down to the bottom. And I'm going to change the words to Mr. E's Art Club. And then grabbing the arrow tool, because I want to shrink that down a little bit. Okay. Okay, so now I want to do some text along the sides. So I'm going to duplicate that layer. And I'm going to use the arrow tool just to drag it. And I'm going to spin it or rotate it. And I'm going to plop it down there. And then I'm going to zoom in so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. There we go. And I'm going to change this one, making sure I'm on the right layer. There it is. And then grabbing the T, highlighting that, pressing delete. And I'm going to change it to today's date, March the 14th, 2021. And I'm going to duplicate that layer and using the arrow tool, shimmy it over. Make sure it's in exactly the right place. You might need to nudge it with the arrow keys on your keyboard just to make sure of that. And then this time I'm going to use the T to change it to Photopea tutorial. Just explaining what it is. Just make sure the text box is big. Okay. Right, next. Like Magdiel Lopez, I'm going to put my name along the side. So I'm going to drag a new layer of that text up here. And plop it into place there. It's a bit big, so I'm going to use the handles just to shrink it a bit, holding shift so that it stays the same ratio, and then same as before, deleting the words, writing my name instead. And then I've got one last piece of text I want to put in, so I'm going to duplicate that layer again, bring it up to the top, rotate it, holding shift so that it snaps into a vertical position. And I'm going to leave it as saying Mr. E's Art Club as well. And that is my piece done and dusted. I hope you find this tutorial helpful.